practical applications of genomic technology. Now you'll see that a colleague of mine, Dan Myhock, our Executive Director of Herd Advancement Services at Holstein, was the scheduled speaker for today, but due to some personal conflicts he was not available to come to Denver. So fortunately for him, I was coming along anyway, so I can pick up on his presentation here. One of the things before we get into it that I wanted to talk about, just genomics in general with the dairy industry. We're about 4 years into the actual application of this technology into our industry. Our producers are actively using this information and what they're getting out of testing their animals to make decisions on the farm. So what we asked Dan to come up with for a presentation here was some practical uses or applications that we're starting to see, particularly on the heifer side. I think for any of you that have followed the genomics in the dairy industry, early on when this technology first came out and was available commercially, the AI organizations used this technology quite extensively for bull testing. Not only to test the old bulls that were either not available anymore or still available, but young bulls, bulls being born on the farm, trying to determine which animals they want to bring into their progeny test programs. Also in the early applications, we saw a lot of use with the high genetic value females. So a lot of those cows that we consider bull mothers in the breed were being tested. And really what that was confirming with a lot of those animals is that good animals are good. That we're just building on top of what we already knew about those animals. But what's happening now is the average dairy farmer is starting to see the potential of what genomics can do in their herd. So that's what we're going to focus on today. There's a lot of avenues that we could have gone with a presentation like this with the dairy industry. Again, with 4 years worth of information that we've been able to collect, it could have gone in a lot of different directions. But for today, we'll stick to some practical uses on the farm. So given the theme of the annual meeting here this year, I thought this statement would be appropriate, and Dan found this for me with a statement by Danny Kleinfelter from Texas A&M University. The function of a competitive market is to drive the economic return to the average producer to break even through supply and demand responses in both input and output markets. In equilibrium, the top end are profitable and growing, the average are hanging in there, and the bottom end are losing money and exiting the industry. Business success and survival depend on continuous improvement at a pace necessary to stay out of the back of the pack. And I think this kind of sums up what genomics is starting to do for dairy producers. So before we get into some results and some trends that we're seeing in the industry, we want to talk a little bit about the genomic predictions that we're dealing with today. The first release, or the first commercial application, was available in 2008, and again, a lot of that was done on the bulls by the AI organizations. Today, we're using blood, hair, or semen samples provided by the animal owners. The dairy producers work through an organization, a nominating organization like the Holstein Association or another breed association. The AI organizations are nominating organizations. All of these organizations funnel animal ID information to the USDA's AIPL system. The AIPL system is the database for all of this information. So if a dairy producer wants to test their animal, they work through one of these organizations, order a test, they send the sample to the laboratory, and there the DNA is extracted from the samples. The DNA is placed on a chip. These chips come in a variety of platforms. The early stages was a 50,000 SNP platform, which is still available. It's a little bit more expensive test. So early on, again, we saw a lot of bulls being tested, high genetic animals being tested. They were worth the price of being tested at that cost. Those SNPs were evenly distributed across 30 chromosomes, And at that point, that information was sent on to AIPL, where they calculated the results of the laboratory process, and they produced the genomic predictions and sent them back to the organizations that originally ordered the test for the producer. So in a case like us with the Holstein Association, we would get the genomic predictions from AIPL and provide them back to our customer in a usable report. So again, talking a little bit about some of the early applications, again, that 50K SNP chip introduced in August of 2008. Again, primarily used as a tool to sort males for AI. One of the early applications down on the farm with this technology was sorting out which bull to buy off the farm. As you can imagine, in our industry, we have a lot of embryo transfer work going on. A lot of high-end animals are flushed, and what ended up happening is you could have multiple bulls from the same flush on the farm, from the same flush. The AIs would typically come on and determine which one they were going to buy, but if you have full brothers sitting next to each other, you had a 50-50 shot basically of getting it right, which one was better. Everything on paper said that those two animals were the same. You're using parent average. Both had the same parents. So which one was correct? Well, genomics is now allowing AIs or other buyers of animals to determine which one of those full sibs is just a little bit better than the other, genetics speaking. So it gives them a little bit more reliability when making those kind of decisions. In 2010, the industry started using a 3K platform, a 3000 SNP platform. This was a less expensive test, and it gave more producers the opportunity to get involved with this technology. And since that time, that's where we've seen the steady increase in the females being tested, especially the heifers. This is where producers are starting to see value in testing these animals. Now, just to lay out some of the costs for you, depending on the organization that sells the test, the tests range from about $42 to $43 up to $45, $46. So it's a very tight price within the market. We sell a 3K test for $43, which is very close to the other organizations. A 50K test is through us is $125. So you can see even at the lower cost 3K platform, you're still investing $43 into an animal, and in some cases to confirm what you already knew about that animal. Just at the end of 2011, the 3K was replaced by a 6K, and actually that was just an across-the-board upgrade from the 3K platform. So every animal now being tested at the lower level is getting a 6K and not a 3K. So as we go through these transitions as an industry, we'll still see some animals out there with 3K records, which is denoted on their pedigree or other genomic reports. But as we move forward, animals will now be receiving the 6K designation. So we'll talk a little bit about the distribution between the sexes here in testing since the onset of the 3K test. Again, early on, most of the testing was being done on males, and as that more cost-effective test came available, you've seen that the females have been increasing quite dramatically, and I have another slide here too that will demonstrate that increase. Okay. So I'm not sure if the numbers are how they're coming up on the screen here, but what I'll do is I'll point out a couple of things here. This circle here, this number 8,630 represents up until April of 2010 the total number of heifers that had been tested since the first genomic predictions were being available. You'll see that during this time when the 3K became available, the heifers right here in this dark blue have increased quite dramatically, 689% in that time frame. You'll see that overall, all animals up here, there was a 226% increase. But you can see that the heifers are really where the market is going with these tests. The other categories here, we have two categories for bulls, young bulls and proven or old bulls. stayed somewhat consistent down in that range, and then cows stayed pretty consistent as well. So, you know, the high genetic cows are continuing to be tested, but there's only so many of those that people want to test. So we talk about we'll stick now on the heifer component here, and where this tool is being used in the application. You see some component of commercial heifer development programs, component of optimizing inventory management. It's no secret here in our industry that over the last few years, with the extensive use of sex semen, there's a lot of excess heifers sitting out on the farms, and there's a lot of avenues to cull out some of these heifers, exporting options, sales to other dairy producers. But producers want to know which animals are the ones to keep and which ones are the ones they want to sell. And it's also a component of effective management of whole herd cost of production. So we're talking long range sometimes when we think about genomics, especially with heifers. You know, you still have to wait a couple years before that heifer is going to be, you know, in the production string and actually bringing something back onto the farm from a revenue standpoint. So the decisions you're making early in their life can certainly have an impact on what happens down the road. So who are some of the customers that we're dealing with right now? Who is coming to us, particularly the Holstein Association and some of these other organizations offering the test, and starting to look at some of these tools and how they can start making decisions? Well, we have Dairy Profile 1, for example, a medium-sized dairy. They're typically reporting data, and when we talk about reporting data, we're talking about they're on official DHI test. So they're reporting milk production records into the USDA genetic evaluation system monthly or every other month, some schedule that they're reporting that. They're also involved in breed association programs and services. So they're having a classifier actively come on the farm once a year to evaluate their animals and provide phenotypic data from those, collecting phenotypic data from those animals. The producer is more involved in sire selection. So the dairy producer himself is actually looking at data and actually mating his cows. He's deciding which bulls I want to use on which cows. And in this dairy, expansion is not necessarily an option, whether it's geographical issues or just size or land area. So that would be a profile of one dairy. Our second profile we could focus on is our large dairy. Typically, these large dairies don't report data. So they are not involved with DHI test. They aren't classifying their animals with a breed association. They're not registering their animals. So there's a lot of difference between what they're doing with the data they collect. And in this case, they're collecting a lot of data using on-farm systems, but they're not reporting it off the farm. A lot of their decisions are data-driven. They're limited to no involvement in sire selection. So in a lot of these large dairies, they rely on another party to make some of their breeding decisions for them. That could be an AI organization. They could have this company come in and use a breeding program or software that they have to mate all their cows for them. So the dairy producer isn't that involved with that individual selection of bulls for individual animals. Aggressive adoption of technology. So these herds are always looking for that new cutting-edge technology that's going to give them an advantage, make them more efficient at that large scale. And with a lot of these large dairies, expansion is always in play. There's obviously some areas and geographical situations, water issues, environmental issues that can prevent a large dairy from expanding any further, but more times than not, we do see large dairies have that capability. So between these two dairy profiles, that large and medium, they do have some things in common. One, these herds are well managed with low calf mortality, strong reproduction, and good nutritional programs. Their herd may be fully, partially, or not registered, but most are purebred AI. So you know that they're, whatever breed this happens to be, for instance, Holstein, that over years of using 100% AI bulls, whether they're registered or not, the animals are Holstein. And so there's a lot of information within those animals, within that animal's DNA, that can still provide a lot of information, even though there isn't a whole lot on paper. The quality of their management and performance has given them options. So Genomics is rewarding them in some respects for doing such a good job managing their dairies. And so now they can tap into this new technology. So let me just stop here for a second and talk about this graph and what it represents. There's two sides to this page. One is net merit dollars, and you can see that up on the top left there. And then we have what we call our PTA milk value. And so these are just two indexes that we use out of many in the dairy industry to provide information back to the dairy about how that animal is going to perform or could perform to her potential. And you'll see that typically if we have a sire and dam recorded on that animal, you're going to get a reliability for net merit somewhere in that mid-20, 25, or 26%. If the animal only has a sire and there's no dam information available, the reliability is going to come down. But you can see that the sire contributes a lot to the reliability of our animals' indexes. And you can see a dramatic drop if that animal has no sire. So if it's just a dam, that reliability can drop quite significantly. And of course, with no sire, no dam, there's no data available. And then this would just be the average over here. The average here. Looking at PTA milk, very similar scenario. So we're just looking to see that there is consistency between these two indexes, which are very important in the dairy industry. Now, if we incorporate genomic results into the same animals, you can see that the reliability skyrockets in some of these cases here. Over parent average, you can see that for net merit dollars, the genomic prediction has now increased the reliability up into the mid-60s. Same case with the no dam. So that sire again is contributing a lot to the reliability. Even with no sire recorded, the genomic test is going to do a genotype along with providing the genomic predictions. It's actually going to tell you who the sire is. So even if you don't have a sire recorded, doing a genomic test on an animal is going to come back and tell you who the sire is. So that's where that jump is calculated there. Same thing with milk. You can see the reliability increases quite significantly here. And I'll just throw on a couple little things here. So the average increase in reliability went from 22% to 64% using a genomic test. Average increase in reliability for milk went from 24% to 70%. So this is just a simple curve graph here where we want to show, okay, now that you've got a group of heifers and you want to test them, what can you do with that information once you've got it? Okay, we know that we can segregate our heifers out now by which ones are good, which ones are average, which ones are below average, and which ones are from a genetic standpoint, are not animals we want to build our genetic base from. So this first category here, this non-select, and on my screen it comes up as yellow. I hope that's the color you can see. But this would be a group that's undesirable from a genetic standpoint. So these are animals that could certainly be culled from the herd. They could be used as recipients for embryos. These are animals that we just don't see the genetic value in continuing their lineage on the farm. The second group here would be just below average group of heifers. We could use, say, some conventional semen with them. We don't expect them to contribute a whole lot to the genetic progress of the herd, but they're still important. They still need to grow. They still need to produce a calf, and they need to get into the milking string. The third group here, this select above average group, could be a group that we would use some sex semen on. So they are important animals. We see the genetic value in them. We can match them or mate them with some sex semen and continue with the genetic progress of those animals on the herd. And then we have this, what we consider the high genetic value animals. These are animals that we want to put into programs like embryo transfer or IVF. These ones we hope we can get the most out of them, even though they're a small group. So again, with the embryo transfer, we have the ability to move a lot of their genetics and implant them into these other animals. This is just an example from a dairy in Idaho, a customer of ours, who put together this short list of animals ranked by net merit dollar. And what he did was he tested about 300 heifers, and he already had a parent average on the animals, so he was already able to sort the animals first by the information that he had with no genomic data. What it is, after he genomically tested the animals, he re-ranked them, and you can see by net merit dollars with the genomic test, he had animals that started up at high at 751 and went down, and at least in his top 20, down to 627, and they're ranked 1 through 20 over here. But you can see a little shuffling in that data from the parent average. So originally, he ran a list with 20 animals out of here and wanted to compare how they realigned in the chart. But one thing that came out of this, and I'm not sure if it's easy to see or not, this is a red number, same with 24 and 21. These three animals were originally down in the 93rd, 21st, and 24th spot, respectively, with the original parent average list. But after we did some genomic tests on them, you can see that this animal, which was previously ranked 93, took a significant jump up to the number 12 spot on net merit dollar. So not only was he able to confirm that, yes, the top end of my animals, or my heifers, the top 20, are good animals, they are where they should be, but he was able to catch a couple outliers and get them up there, which otherwise would have been unknown to him. And you know, so now he's able to make some other decisions based on this. I'll show you one other example of him doing this work, only ranking the animals on the Holstein's Total Performance Index, or TPI. Again, he took his traditional TPI list, came up with his top 20, then compared the genomic TPI next to them, and you can see that they're re-ranked. But you can see a little bit more shuffling here, but you see an animal was previously ranked 127 with the traditional TPI and took a jump up to 2146 and all the way up to the 9th spot. So what you can see is around these lines that a dairy producer could cut off is where the value is going to be, you know, that difference between a below average or average animal or above average or really high-end animal. You can kind of shuffle and sort around that line, and you know, a couple animals may fall below that line that you've designated, a couple animals may jump up, but in the end, for the most part, you're just confirming what you already know, but there are going to be those outliers, some of those animals you can catch that, again, otherwise would have gone under the radar screen. So some cumulative benefits of, at least with, you know, testing the heifers and doing some of this heifer sorting. You can improve your dairy profitability for the long term. Again, you know, we're talking about heifers. You know, these animals are a couple of years, in some cases a couple of years away, depending on when you test them. You know, some of these animals are being tested at a very young age, you know, just a couple days old. Others are being tested at various ages. So depending on when they're being tested, there's certainly a lot of time before these animals are going to actually start performing, and when you can actually determine that this animal is performing to her capabilities. Improve awareness related to genetic improvement, including sire selection. So we didn't get into this a whole lot, but once you've got this information, you can start mating your cows or heifers using a whole lot of indicators. You know, there's a lot of other bits of information we're starting to collect out of this. You know, we're talking about now looking for recessives, which we already could test for, but now we can do all of this with one test. We're getting recessives, we're getting the genetic information. So breeding animals to avoid certain undesirable recessives, or breeding them for desirable recessives. Polled, for instance, is something that people will start paying a little more attention to, I think. Red coat color, RC, those kind of things. enable more strategic allocation of complementary technologies. So again, we use a lot of technology on the dairy farm. How can this help us use those more efficiently and make better decisions with those? Increase the number of animals contributing information to the genetic evaluations of the respective breeds. So again, our genetic evaluation system, our animal model, funnels data up through from the production side, the DHI system, the phenotypic side from the breed associations into the USDA AIPL system to process all that information and come back with usable information to our customers. That's in past years has been limited based on herds that found it useful to participate in those programs or services. Like I said, a lot of large dairies don't register their animals. They don't DHI test. But as some of these other dairies want to start using this technology, whether they are looking at it like this or not, they're actually contributing more information into this evaluation system that we all rely on as an industry for our sire proofs, our female information. So that's a lot more animals coming into the system that we can then use to produce this genetic information on. I think this thing keeps popping up here. It's to tell me I'm online. So those are some of the benefits. Now I would say, and I don't have slides up here from Dan's presentation, but with anything new in the industry, this is still maturing in the dairy industry. This is about 4 years in. We still see a lot of potential out of this technology. There's a lot more to learn. But this hasn't gotten to this point without some growing pains as well. We have hit a few snags, a few bumps in the road. One thing that's really important about the third point there, enable a more strategic allocation of complementary technologies, is that, again, this technology is built off of our current animal model, and that relies on information coming in from the farm. What we are trying to avoid with this technology is that people rely solely on genomic information. And, as you continue to genomically test animals, if you stop collecting the real data from the farms, the production information, the classification information or phenotypic information from the animals, you're not able to confirm whether or not the numbers that you're seeing are real. And so that's where this is just one other tool that the producers have in their so-called tool belt